Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Tim Weaver with Studio4Media.com, and if you're watching this, that means that you have subscribed to our website, so thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it, and we're really excited to be bringing you all these tutorials and models and all these other things that you guys can have for a really cheap price. So anyway, today we're going to be taking a look at creating this disintegration effect inside of Maya, and I got this idea from Tron, obviously, the movie, where this disc thing goes through the dude's stomach and then he falls into a whole bunch of cubes. So that's going to be sweet. Let's take a look at how we do it here. Okay, so first off, if I start this over, the dude just kind of jumps up slowly because it's all in slow motion, and the thing comes through him, and then poof, cubes come out, and you can see just go everywhere. And then we can, if we want, make him fall into a whole bunch of other cubes as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and go to Open Scene. And we'll start with Tron Disintegration 1 Start. Now this will be available for download for the project files, and so you guys can start right there as well. Open that up, and we'll take a look here. And right now we can see we have a dude, just a normal dude, and a camera, which will be our render cam, a giant torus, which will act as our disk. And then over here you can also see we have a little cube, and that'll come in handy later. So our scene's all set up, and we can get started. If I go to Panels, Perspective, Camera 1, you can see what how our camera's set up. So this will be our render cam, but we can change that later if we want. So there it is. The thing just goes through them, and yeah, let's get started. I'll go back into perspective mode. Now, one thing you can notice right away is that the dude is split into two different pieces, two different parts, and that's important. So what I did was I just animated him. It's a terrible animation, but just jumping up like this, and after I got done animating him, I split him into two parts, and so that way they flowed real nice together. And now, we'll just go ahead and get started. So in the In Dynamics tab, make sure you have that selected, have our dude's midsection selected. Go to nParticles, create nParticles, make sure you got balls selected, and then we're going to hit Emit from Object and go into the option box here. The default, I guess, is Omni. We'll change that to Surface, and the rate we will set to, let's say, 500 to start, and we'll hit create. Now a lot of this process is trial and error, so I might be just going through a whole bunch of settings until we get something that looks good. I didn't really write down what I had in the final example, but oh well. So if you look here, if we push play, you're going to see that nothing is happening, and that's because earlier I turned off my nParticles. So by default these will be turned on, and you'll see why I turn those off in a little bit. So now we got a whole bunch of balls coming from this dude's midsection, dropping down and hitting the floor, alright? And they're actually going through the floor. So, first things first, to make our scene more efficient, let's go ahead and set up a thing here where when the particles fall on the floor, they bounce. So, here we go. So we'll go into our outliner, and we'll select the nParticles. Actually, let's select this plane. Select our P-plane 1, go to nMesh, and create Passive Collider. So collider is what it's called. I couldn't think of it earlier. So right away, now that we have that Passive Collider, these particles are going to fall down, and then you can see they're going to bounce on our floor. And they're just going to keep bouncing and bouncing, and eventually they're going to fall off, but at least looks a lot better than having to go straight through the floor. Now for our scene, you can't even really see the floor, but in some cases you might see the floor, so that's good to know. Alright, let's take a look and see. Right now we just got tons of particles just flowing from this dude's stomach and then hitting and bouncing, and not really that exciting. What we can do right away though that'll make it more intriguing is select our torus and do the same thing. Go to nMesh, create Passive Collider, go back, push play, and then here you go. You'll see that these particles now go flying towards the camera. So that's pretty sweet. we're getting somewhere now. You can see. Not bad, not bad. Let's take a look from our render cam here. See if we like what we see. That's pretty sweet. We're getting the general idea here. Alright, back to perspective view. What I want to do first off is go into our nucleus attributes. So, attribute editor, you can click it up here. If it's not up there, you can hit Control A and it'll pull it up. And make sure you have our nucleus selected with the nParticles. As soon as you make one, it also makes a nucleus for you, so it'll already have it there for you. And you can see our gravity here is set to 9.800. That's the default. And I think I had it turned up quite a bit. The value of like 15. I think. We'll find out. So now it hits and that looks pretty good. Let's just make this a little bit bigger. If we look here, here's this cube over here that I've already made, and it's just a cube, came with the project file. What we can do is with that selected, we'll bring up our outliner, and we will shift select or control select nParticles. Then go up to nParticles tab and hit instancer. And now all of these particles are being instancing off of this one cube to get its shape. And so I'm going to show you real quick. If I just scale this down or up, that's all the particles will scale to that size. So something like that there looks pretty good. And see, now you see the problem that we're having is that the particles are still balls and the shape is trying to be a square, so it intersects. And so that's why if you go to show and disable your nParticles, now all you see is the squares. And if we back this up and play it, the dude's got squares, and then thing hits and poof, squares go flying. So now let's go ahead and take a look at what we can do to make it so the squares aren't always there and falling, and they only need to show up right when this thing hits. And it's real simple. We will select our particles. Let's bring out the channel box editor here, and as we scroll through, right about there, right when this thing intersects, so I'd say frame 34, with our particles selected, let's set a keyframe, but turn this to a value of 0, which will turn it off. And actually what we need to do is have our cube be a value of 0. No, I was right the first time. Particles value 0. Okay, yeah, particles value 0. Frame 34 is what we said. So we'll set a keyframe here. Right click on it, go to key selected, and now we got that keyframe set. Now we'll go forward one frame, set visibility to 1, which is on, and set another keyframe. Key selected. And we'll push play, and now it should just kick on right when the sphere gets there, and then poof, the sphere goes flying through. And let's go to our render cam real quick. I think that needs to be more like that. Okay, so now when that goes flying through, you don't see the cubes until it intersects. And right about there, it also needs to turn back off. So we'll say 46, we'll set another keyframe and go forward one more. Set this to value 0 and key one last time. So it should come through, hit, and then the visibility goes to off. So now the problem we're having is when it goes off, it just freezes. Now, you know what we should do instead? The best way to get around this is, let's delete that. we'll do the kind of the similar process, except what we'll do is we'll go in here and we'll just keyframe this rate here instead. So frame 34, we'll bring this to value of 0 and say key selected or set key. Go up to frame 34, 35, and let's do something like 5,000. Hit enter, and then right about there we need to make sure it goes back to 0. Very good. So make sure whenever we turn it to 5,000 that we say key selected or set key, and then that way if we had auto keys turned on down here, which I normally do, if we just hit it without having to set the key, you don't need to do that. So for example, if I'd had 5,000, I hit 0, it automatically sets it to 0. I don't need to worry about going in here and right clicking and hitting set key. So I normally have that turned on. But anyway, so now it goes through. You see it kicks on and then it kicks off real quick. So all we have are the particles. The second this torus interacts with it, if I scrub through here, you'll see. So it interacts. Boom, the particles are born. They hit and they die as it goes through. So, and they keep moving even though there's no more being created, which is the problem we were having before. They wouldn't do that. So, this is the better way to do it. And as you can see, we need to increase the amount of particles we have, which isn't a problem. We can just go back to the rate and make it higher than 5,000. But let's first mess with some of the settings here, because right now I don't like the way this looks. It doesn't have as much explosion as we want it to have. So let's take a look in our particle shape here, and let's play this out. Okay, so one thing is, if you see here under the dynamic properties of the drag, just to show you, let's turn that to 0. You'll see right away what this does is it makes these particles just explode out. It gives it a lot cooler effect instead of kind of just staying together and then falling. That's the effect we're looking for. If I were to turn this up, it wouldn't be very exciting. You can see there. So, I think we'll keep that at value of 0, because what we have now is the gravity turned up, and so the gravity takes over and then pulls those particles down. So that looks pretty good. I like the way that looks. One thing we don't have is our stomach disappearing. So that's where we'll use the visibility. Okay, so let's go back to our channel box here, and so right now it looks good. It hits right there. So when the particles come on, let's go forward, maybe right there once it gets covered up. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, let's do frame 36. So frame 35, visibility is set to on, which is what we want. So key selected, and then we'll go forward one frame, 36. So that's a 0 for off, and then key selected again. And then now, as it plays through, the stomach is no longer there. So we get this effect that the stomach has actually gotten disintegrated from a whole bunch of cubes. Like that. Pretty sweet. And you can see here it's all jagged and everything, because I just took the faces and separated them. So you can kind of see that it's not perfect, that he got disintegrated. Now these cubes look a little bit too big, and of course that's an easy fix. All we got to do is have our cube and our master cube, but remember we hit it, so let's turn it back on, and we'll scale it down just a little bit. But I'm going to play this out so I can see what size we want. I think what we want to do here is have more cubes but smaller size. So we'll scale this down a little bit. That looks better. Alright, that looks pretty good. And then what we'll do is we'll turn up how many cubes we have. I mean, this is basically the gist of it. Pretty simple, really, but a really sweet effect that you can do with it. Right now, obviously, our torus is really big, and we want it that big so we have that explosion effect. If it was smaller, it wouldn't push all the particles out with such force. So what you would do is create a second one of these that is the size of the disk that you want, and you would just animate it the same as this, except when you render it, you hide this torus object, so it's still affecting the particles, but you can't see it affect the particles. So it looks like your smaller disk is the one going through. I'm not going to show you how to do that. I kind of just explained it. It's pretty simple. So looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and increase our particles though. So go back to our attribute editor here, emitter, and particle rate is what we want to increase. So frame 34 is where we set it to 5,000. I'm going to turn this auto key on. Okay, I'm going to set this up to a value of 15,000. Now, when you start messing with this, your computer could slow down a little bit. So heads up to that. Now, obviously, this goes back down to 0. We'll set this to 15,000. And then 0. Okay, so let's see if that did anything. And we might have to go back and adjust the size of our cube again. But you can see right there, boom. Okay, now that does a lot more. So having those, now we have, probably have to go in and change our drag amount now. Maybe we'll add a little bit more back into it. Keep them from exploding so much that we have so many particles. Because what we have turned on right now, by default, it should be turned on by default. If not, you want to turn it on. And I'll show you, is the collisions self-collide. So the more particles you have, the more they're going to explode off one another because they're colliding with each other and it gives them more energy. So that's what's happening here. So once you increase the rate of the particles, you might have to go back in and tweak some of your settings, and that's looking pretty good. We might have to increase our gravity to affect these particles, but that's looking pretty good. I might do a little bit more drag on that. Let's do 0.1. See what that looks like. Not bad. Anyway, I don't want to go too long on this tutorial. You get the general idea. Pretty sweet effect. You can do some really cool things with these nParticles. Now that's looking a lot better. I'm going to go in here to the nucleus. Let's turn this gravity. There it is. Turn it up to 20 maybe. Yeah, that's looking better. Much better. So the dude just gets clobbered, and then, you know, it would suck to be made out of cubes because this is what happens. See, now what we can do is, now that we have this one kind of set up how we want it, we could go in and, since we have these separated out, add a different particle and dynamics to the top frame here, or the rest of the body, so they could disintegrate at a different rate at a different time and everything than this midsection does. So let's say it like explodes like this, and then he's like, oh crap, and then his front section decays and his legs are just standing there or something. So right now I'll show you these two are combined, but if we go to face, select all these faces, and go to, well, we got to change our tab here to polygons. Mesh extract, separate faces, extract. Is that right? There we go. So object mode. So we have now 3 separate things. So what we could do is we could let's push play here. Dude has no stomach no more, so his top's got to collapse. So let's go ahead and go back to our nDynamics and go to nParticles, create nParticles. Just doing the exact same thing. Emit from object. That looks good. Create. And now we're going to have to go and show our particles because we won't be able to see them otherwise. And so this dude is emitting particles as well. And of course we want those to be turned off until about here. Let's say frame 56. So let's go ahead and do that. Emitter. So this to 0. I'll back up a frame or 2. And then we'll go forward a couple frames. So this to a value of, let's just do 5,000. So our computer doesn't explode. And do we do 0? 0. That should set the keyframe. Let's just make sure set key. And then now, there we go. That should do it. We have auto key turned on, so that's why I didn't have to right click on it. You have to right click and set the first key, and then after that it'll do the rest of them for you once you make a change. So it gets exploded, then this happens. Okay, so now right about there this happens, and let's go ahead and adjust these settings because we want these to fall really fast, and that'll be all through our nucleus. And the gravity, let's turn that up quite a bit, like 60. And we want that to be born and die really fast as well. So once it gets to 5,000, we want to immediately turn back off. So we'll set another keyframe, go forward 0. Anyway, you get the general idea. We'll set the visibility, on this guy. So particles plop, and then particles turn on, and then right there. Set the visibility on this dude. This dude's top half. There it is. Go back a frame. Key it forward a frame. 0. That should automatically set another key. So anyway, we'll take a look real quick. These things explode out. Looks good. Has no midsection, so now he's like, ah, crap. Then he falls to the ground. And okay, of course we still got his face and whatnot, so anyway, you can hide that as well. Same keyframes as the other one. Anyway, you get the idea. Pretty sweet effects you can do with it. I want to show you one more real quick. So if we go to File, Open a Scene, and let's open Tron Disintegration Start 2. Open that up. We're not going to save this. And this is probably the best animation I've ever made, so you guys better be impressed. It's just a dude. I just didn't even animate it at all. Just animated going into the ground. And we're going to do the exact same thing with this, except when he hits the ground, he's going to turn into a whole bunch of cubes. So this is an effect you can see on Tron several different times when the dude's like riding their bikes, and then they mess it up, and then it goes, and then they blow up, and they blow up into a ton of different cubes. Anyway, it's just a simulation, but it looks really sweet, and you can do a lot of cool things with it. So same thing, select the dude, nParticles. We'll just do emit from object. It should all be set. I'll bump this up to 15,000, and we're going to set, actually let's set it to 0 for now. So create. We want it set to 0 because we want it to only turn on right here. Right at that frame 12. So we'll go back a frame. Or I guess we'll... Yeah, right about there. So right there we'll turn this on to 15. First we'll set it. Set a key. Forward a frame. 15,000. Let's actually do 20,000. And that should spawn a whole bunch of particles. And we got to show our nParticles as well. Go back and we'll see what the deal is. Boom. So now we want to make sure we turn these off, otherwise this dude will be underneath here, just spawning tons of particles. So once he goes through, and then right there, we'll set another key, go forward a frame, and then turn that to 0. Now he's not spawning nothing else anymore. Alright, so again the particles just go through the floor. So we just highlight our plane, go to end mesh, create passive collider. Now they should just wink. Oh, what? Turn into a bunch of cubes or spheres. So anyway, let's turn off my grid real quick. So, and here's our polygon cube right here and our scene, and we'll just hit that, shift select or control select our nParticles, and we'll go to instancer again. Now we can turn off our nParticles. We just got a bunch of cubes, and we also have a camera in this one, I think, too. Yeah, cool. Anyway, you can see how you can make some really sweet effects with this. I want to make sure that self collide is turned on. It is. Cool. Highlight our cube. I'm going to get it out of here. Whoa. Want to move it out of here. And I think I do want to scale it down just a little bit more. Something like that. Anyway, you get the general idea. Pretty cool effect. What's cool about this is you can also use polygon cube, pull up our hyper shade here, and we could make a new one and make it red or blue or whatever, and then we can just select our box, and when we apply it to the box, it applies it to all of them, just so you can see it better at least. And then what we'll do is do the same thing as when the dude interacts with the floor, he just disappears, turns into a whole bunch of particles. So just turn the visibility off on him. Anyway, you can see how this can be a really cool effect, and you can get really close, and the particles just kind of fall off on the floor, and looks really cool. Hopefully this tutorial was helpful. I know we didn't go over any type of lighting or shading or rendering. This is more just for the dynamic aspect of it. But if you guys are interested in how to light these particles, because in the example I know it got some really cool lighting, motion blur in there as well. So if you guys want to learn how to do that, I could do a tutorial on that as well. If you guys want, just let me know. Leave your comments, message me, whatever. And yeah, it'll be a fun tutorial to do. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you guys can do some really cool stuff with this technique, and let me know what you make with it, because it'll be pretty cool. So anyway, thanks for watching. My name's Tim Weaver with Studio 4 Media, and take a look at the rest of the tutorials we have on the website, and also all the free models and everything else we have available for you. So yeah, we'll see you on the next tutorial.